All right. Well, Jeff, thanks so much for joining us today. I'm excited to hear a little bit more about your role with NAPFA, what brought you here and just really the future of the industry at large. So why don't we go ahead and start there? How did you get to the position that you're in today? So I'd love to hear a little bit more of your background.
Sure, sure. But first of all, thank you for having me, Lauren. I really appreciate it. You all have been a good partner for NAPFA and NAPFA firms, so it's really good to spend some time with you. I've been with the association for 8 years. Looking back on it, I'm a career association guy. From I graduated from college on a Tuesday, and I started my first association job, a week later on Wednesday. So this is really all I've ever done for my adult professional life. And, it was back in 2013. NAPFA CEO at the time had announced her retirement. And as boards do, they initiated a search and hired a search firm that does a lot of work in the financial planning association space. And initially I was like, no, I'm not interested. I was working at a consultancy here in Chicago that focused on associations and nonprofit organizations. And it was a good gig. It was a great place. I was on an equity track. And so, initially I wasn't interested. Luckily, that search consultant was very persistent. And he's like, maybe you should just learn a little bit more about the organization. And then it was maybe you should meet some of the members. And from that point on, it was just really infectious. I know that every American needs a financial advisor in their life to some degree. And some people make bad decisions. Some people make good decisions. Some people make decisions based on what they know. And that's often not enough. And, when I started hearing the members that I met with in the search process talk about what they do, why they do it, what really motivates them professionally, I was hooked. And part of it was because I was one of those consumers that made a bad decision, in terms of the advisor that I engaged with and, got wrapped up in some products that were totally unsuitable for me at my age and profession, where I was in life. And, from then on, it was just, this is the right place for me. And it's been a great 8 years.
And then when you came to NAPFA, looking back those 8 years ago and looking at where you are now, what's been perhaps your philosophy or the tone or value set that you've been able to cultivate to really kind of move the needle from looking back 8 years ago to where you are now as you move forward?
Yeah, when I came to NAPFA, it was in a really solid place. Yes, there were some things that volunteers and members and the community was demanding that the board address for sure, but that's every professional membership organization. So it wasn't a situation where, wow, we need to blow this up and start from scratch. It was an organization that at the time it just celebrated its 30th anniversary. And so the opportunity to really look to the future and identify what we wanted to do to create some lasting change was right there on the horizon. So we had great volunteers that really had an understanding of where they wanted to take the association and an understanding of what they believed its potential to be. And so walking into that situation, it was really easy to start that listening tour of, hey, what are the things that we need to do better? What are the things that we need to do more of? And what are the things that we should stop doing? And, people were willing and interested in sharing their thoughts and their opinions. And that really allowed me to get a roadmap to, discuss with the volunteers that were at the helm at the time to really think about where are we going to, sharpen the saw a little bit, round some edges, just really to make this experience a little bit better for the members and the consumers that they serve. It's interesting when you think about it. 8 years ago, NAPFA was an association of about 2,400 practitioners and students and academicians. And right now, here we are, we're pushing 4,400, which is really, really exciting to think about that trajectory and just where the association could go, into the future. We're 2 years shy almost of our 40th anniversary. And so we've got this little, thing that's hanging out there of, what do we want to be when we grow up? Because that 40-year mark really is growing up for not only the association, but then also the profession that just celebrated its 50th anniversary a few years ago.
Absolutely. And so it sounds like membership, I would assume, was a goal, or perhaps it just came from the value set of NAPFA, seeing that growth. What other changes have you seen in the past 8 years? And then what are some of the changes looking ahead that you see for NAPFA?
Yeah, I think that we're moving on to generation, 3.0 almost. When I started, you were starting to see some of the original firm founders start to exit the profession, the association, and their next gen stepping up. And now we're seeing an even younger generation entering the association. And that's really exciting for me because one of the things that I felt like the volunteers were really concerned about at the time, and rightly so, was just the general age of the NAPFA population. At the time it skewed a little bit older,
Mhm.
like most of financial planning at that time. And I feel like they were really cognizant of that. And one of the pieces of marching order that they gave us was, how do we make this experience more frictionless, if you will?
Mhm.
How do we make it a place where people want to
Yeah.
engage beyond just, I have to do it because I'm a Feeonly planner, that sort of thing, but really to tap into the strength and vibrancy of the community, to really associate with other professionals that are interested in elevating their competency so that they can serve consumers in a more meaningful way. And then people that really want to grow and spread the mission and vibrancy of Feeonly financial planning around the country.
Mhm. I hear you on the frictionless piece. I know there's been firms we worked with where they might be going after a younger generation, and part of making things frictionless is the paperless. It's the more technology focus. It's um, uh, making sure time is used efficiently. Those sorts of things. What uh, It sounds like I'm assuming those are things that you all have been implementing and have been top of mind as well.
We're trying to go more and more digital like everyone else.
Yeah.
The audience that we have currently is demanding it. The audience that we hope to engage in the future is going to want it.
Yeah.
And so it's a place where we're making investments. It's not moving as quickly as we hope, but it's definitely moving.
Yeah.
And I think that's a signal to people that are involved now and those that will come in the future that, this is a place where I need to be.
Mhm.
Some other points of friction really do have to involve, what it takes to be a financial planning professional in 2021. You think about the ease of entering the profession today versus entering the profession in 2001.
Mhm.
From your preparation through your educational coursework to, working at a firm, starting your own firm, acquiring technology, things like that. It's just a very different ball game, and we just need to have that clarity of purpose about where do we fit into the mix?
Mhm.
We're not going to be an entity like one of the networks that exist for advisors. That's not our bread and butter. We're a professional membership association. So we're focused on educational content. We're focused on community and networking, and we're focused on advocacy. And so what we really need to do is make sure that we're delivering on those aspects
Mhm.
of the experience so that our audience really finds the value that they need to continue participating.
That's fair. I know one of the changes you've done over the years, you rolled out a new website, which is more tech forward. And I'd love to hear some of the thinking around that too, and perhaps some of the goals to be able to better serve your audience. So.
Yeah, I think we're in a really, I don't want to say unique position, because we have to serve a professional audience, our members.
Mhm.
And then in some regards, we also have to be a place for people that want to engage with them. So really balancing those competing interests, if you will,
Mhm.
is what was driving the changes that we were making. We were hearing from consumers, your website is, clunky, I'm confused. Am I a planner? Am I looking to work with a planner? And so we needed to address that point of contention. And then we also wanted to make it a little bit more easy to use for our audience. And it needed to tell a better story, if you will. I think that we took the approach that it's never going to be done. As a marketing professional, you can probably appreciate
Yeah,
that.
that's fair.
And so, we're always on this cycle of, well, let's tweak this, let's change that, let's address this. And so we really do pay a lot of attention to what our different audiences are doing on the site to really inform the decisions that we're making from a development standpoint, and then also from a content standpoint.
Yeah.
From a consumer audience, their primary reasons for visiting our website are looking to find a financial planner. And so that's why we continue to make investments and monitor our Find an Advisor tool. And then they're also looking for content about working with a planner, the questions they should ask, or, other relevant information that might inform, the decisions they make when they engage with a professional. And so that's always going to be a high driver for us. We need to feed that well of content, and it's not just about having the technological capability to do it, or the place on the web to house it. It's about how are we creating the content. And so, luckily, our volunteers are really interested in making investments in that area so that we can feed that well, because I feel like that's what's going to drive traffic and interest for the foreseeable future. When you're thinking about it from a practitioner standpoint, what are their primary interests? One, connecting with other practitioners. So making sure that we have that online community hub for people to ask questions relevant to the practice of financial planning, being a business owner, different client cases, and the provider that we work with is usually in awe of the type of traffic and engagement that we get within our community. It's really, really interesting to watch the questions and the responses that happen between members about the issues that they're posing to one another. Members need to be able to, take advantage of, our educational programs, and a lot of that happens through the website. And so making sure that we provide that capacity. And then, if you're a prospective student, you're a prospective planner, we need to have a way for them to become a part of this community. And it really is going to start at that front door.
How are you all reaching those prospective advisors, or, growing your base, and, just staying top of mind as a resource for the members that you serve? So.
Yeah, a lot of what happens from a member growth standpoint is organic. But then, being intentional also about, having good partnerships. So partnerships with the academic community to help tell our story there, because they have a lot of influence over where, a prospective financial planner looks for career opportunities and professional communities to engage with. So making sure that, we're trying to stay front and center with them. Partnerships with organizations like the CFP board. At this point in time, you can't be a NAPFA registered financial advisor without having your CFP certification. So we have a vested interest in making sure that their audience really understands what NAPFA is, how we can be a vital part of their professional journey. One of the decisions that we made a few years ago was to offer a complimentary year of membership to every new fee-only CFP certificant that wants to take advantage of it. And that was driven by the fact of looking at the data and saying, seeing that people weren't finding this community until, year 4, year 5, year 6, maybe even longer in the profession. And so if we reached out, tossed a little bit of an olive branch to them to say, why don't you give it a chance? Why don't you take a look at what it is that we have to offer? Why don't you take a look at what this community can mean to you, even as an early careerist? And we've been very lucky that the conversion rate of those individuals that have taken advantage of that opportunity, they've stuck around when the time came after that 1 year was up, and they actually had to pay. Some of it was because they landed at fee-only firms that saw the value of them being participants in this community. And some of it was because, I personally see the value in this, and so I'm going to pay for it out of my own pocket.
Yeah, that makes sense. They're able to kind of try before you buy, if you will, or start to build those relationships in that community, and then see how it applies to their short and long-term professional growth.
Yeah, and when you think about it, there are a lot of fee-only firms for sure. They tend to skew smaller, so just the availability and inventory of professional opportunities in this space is a little bit different than it may be in some other segments of financial advice and financial planning. And so, anything that we can do to open the door and welcome these individuals in, we want to make sure that we're doing it.
Absolutely. And then you have a unique vantage point, sitting at the helm at NAPFA, being able to see some of these conversations that the advisors are having. You're able to see the inbound data from what potential clients, are asking about, what's of interest to them, right? You've got these partnership connections. What kind of, from your vantage point, what do you see where do you see the industry going? And what do you think it would be good where are some opportunities for improvement as well as you look ahead, either both from kind of really more for the industry at large? So,
Yeah, I think big picture, the people that founded this community were onto something. They were trailblazers, they had a vision, and their vision is the reality now when you think about it. The movement in our space is more towards a NAPFA model than it isn't. And that's really, really exciting because that means the opportunities for the association are really fruitful, are really bright, looking over the course of the horizon. That means that we need to be able to scale up what we do in a more meaningful way. And we can't look at ourselves, as as the underdog anymore. I think a lot of what happened in this space was built on us being a challenger. I've heard the term the mouse that roars. But we're not a small player anymore. Our voice is definitely outsized given the number of participants we have, but we are an incumbent. We bring a lot of credibility to the table, and I think that credibility in the marketplace has been one of the high drivers of people being interested in what we do and bringing people to the table in terms of participating as members and just watching, where this association is going. So I think as the broader profession starts moving more towards a fee for service, whatever the model that you want to have within that, I think it's going to present good opportunities for us. And so I think that's great. Other things that I think we need to be thinking about is just how are firms being structured. You work with a lot of wealth management firms, so you probably see the spectrum. When I started, there was this whole, all the small firms are going to go away. There's going to be a consolidation. You're going to have super regional RAs. You're going to have national RAs, and that's going to be it. The small guys won't be able to compete. And here we are. We still see a vibrant place for small firms, whether they're sole proprietorships or ensembles. They have a vibrant place in this market, and that's really exciting for them. And it points to some great signs for the future. The big guys are definitely getting bigger, and that's good for them. We need enterprise level firms, but we also need some of the middle market and the smaller firms to be able to compete as well. And the tools and the capacity is there for them to be able to do so in a really meaningful way. So we just need to do what we can do to nurture that. Some of the other things that I think are on the horizon, challenges, opportunities, is just what we're doing in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. When you think about the demographics of this country, how they're changing, the demographics of financial planning need to shift as well. And I like to say that this is one of the areas where we're not competing. There isn't a NAPFA viewpoint on DEI. There isn't an FPA viewpoint on DEI. There isn't a BD world position on DEI. This is one of those things where we all can win by making sure that financial advice and financial planning is more diverse, more equitable, and more inclusive. So we need to start thinking about that. From an advocacy standpoint, there's still so much that needs to be done from a regulatory and legislative standpoint. We took a few steps forward during the Obama administration, and then we took a few steps back during the Trump administration. And so we just need to keep fighting the good fight to make sure that consumers across this country have access to fiduciary level advice that's delivered in their best interest. So that's something that will be a strategic priority for this organization for forever. So we can say that, every American, when they decide to engage with a financial advisor, they're doing so under a fiduciary standard of care.
That's exciting to hear you share all of that. So, like I said, I think you're at a very unique vantage point to be able to see everything that's going on. And is there anything in particular that you feel NAPFA as an organization is doing to be able to step up to meet those challenges beyond what you've already shared?
I just think the investments and the foresight that our volunteer leadership has in terms of wanting to lead on issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion, wanting to lead on an advocacy agenda that's really, member-led, member-driven, but consumer-centric. Meaning that when we go to Washington and we start talking about fiduciary, we hear sometimes, well, that's very self-serving. It's self-serving, but it's also the right thing to do. Meaning that, our members have committed to this because they know it's the right thing for the public. And so that's why we will, doggedly pursue fiduciary level advice for all Americans. I think some of the other things that are really, really exciting for us are the fact that, awareness of financial planning is mainstream. People know what financial planners do. They may not know it at a deep level, but I think they have an understanding. I think there's still some work that we can do to help tell that story. But again, that's not something that we're competing against anyone else on. CFP board has a great awareness campaign that benefits the entire profession. It's really interesting, that I'll talk to my peers and they're like, oh, I saw this commercial. I was about getting a financial plan. Is that your organization? I'm like, well, that's not our organization. But we've got 4,400 members that can help you pursue that, if you will. So it's really been exciting to watch that take place, and just the Americans, public, their awareness of the term fiduciary. It was like overnight. This change happened where now I hear from advisors. It's like probably 9 out of 10 clients that come in, potential clients that come into the office. They ask the F word question.
Yeah.
It's not Feeonly that they're asking about.
Yeah.
And so I like to think that, this organization, currently and in the past played a pretty significant role in helping to create those conditions. And, that's a responsibility that we'll take very seriously into the future as well.
Yeah, that's not an easy task. And it becomes less jargony, right, to the public. There's a lot of jargon that is easy to throw around. At all levels, I think of how sophisticated a particular investor is, or individual, and those are questions that come up. But to be able to say you're a fiduciary and what that value set means is, and for it to be translated on a one-to-one, I think is valuable.
Well, and it's also helpful. I remember when I started and, meeting members of the consumer financial press and asking, well, why don't you write more stories about this? Don't you think it would be helpful if Americans read this and, whatever their paper of choice was? And they're like, because people don't understand it. Because, I'd have to spend too many words explaining what everything means for it to be meaningful. And now the fact that they can say it and people understand it, internalize it, and then share it when they're having conversations with the professionals that they're seeking to engage with is really exciting.
Yeah, very good. So just a few more questions here. I love to just ask, over the 8 years that you've been with NAPFA, is there anything that you're really proud of that you feel like that was a really big win? Maybe it's for the industry at large, or for the organization, but anything that you're especially proud of you'd like to share?
There's a few actually. I think just the work that we did with our partners in the Financial Planning Coalition around the DOL's fiduciary rule, even though it was short-lived, being a part of a group that was one of the lone industry voices advocating for more regulation on behalf of the public, that was pretty exciting. Knowing that we were at the center of those conversations. That was just really rewarding because, as an association professional, I could probably have gone my entire career and not worked on anything that would have been that meaningful to so many people in this country as what we were doing back then. I think the organization's work when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, we're small, but we, started our initiative well before a lot of others in this space, and we're chipping away at it and doing some meaningful work, and we have a lot of good engagement on a number of dimensions when it comes to DEI, and so that's really exciting. We've recently transitioned leadership from our Gen 1 leadership of that initiative over to our second generation. And it's interesting to see and exciting to see what their vision and what their ideas are and how that could transform not only the association, but then the profession as well. Just watching the community evolve and grow and change and age down a little bit. I remember walking into my first NAPFA conference in Philadelphia in 2013, and thinking, wow, this is a very mature audience, and it was, because there were a lot of people, and some of them are still around today, that were there, essentially at the beginning, and that's one of the exciting things about financial planning and this association, the fact that you can have a very long and vibrant career and still, meaningfully serve your clients and meaningfully engage with other professionals. But that gives us the opportunity to have just a great generational knowledge transfer. And it's coming, from a place of caring and a handoff of, my generation did our time. We created the conditions, we laid the foundation, and you know what? Now it's your turn to take it to the next level. And you know, we're still pretty young, so that means that we have a lot of runway to see that happen again and again. And so that's just one of the things I'm proud of you know, doing our part to keep that first generation engaged, but then also to steward the next generation's entry and ownership of where we're going as an organization.
It's interesting. I didn't make this parallel between sort of a unique lens as well, being able to talk with a number of firms across the country at various stage of their business. And there's parallels between what you're seeing at large and also what we're seeing in having conversations around. There might be an owner who is looking to transition the firm to a younger generation. Questions about the future regarding technology, regarding how do you take someone who's a main rainmaker to now being spread across partners, or the DEI initiatives, or really challenging sort of in defining value sets within a firm. So what you're saying from a NAPFA perspective, and I think a lot of the work that you're doing, I think is you certainly have your finger on the pulse site, because I feel it too, but in a different way. But those conversations, there's alignment there. So
yes, yes, and I think that's just representative of the fact that the work and the interests of our audience easily becomes the work and the interests of the association.
Yeah.
So we're member led, and it's not meaning that it's because of the volunteer leadership. It's because where do they see themselves going professionally? Where do they see themselves going from a business standpoint? And we need to be responsive to that and make sure that we're programming to keep pace, and ultimately, I hope to be a little bit ahead of them. So that we can help to drive some of the dialogue that they're having internally, or at very least be responsive to the dialogue that they're having, and creating resources and bringing content to bear to help inform the work that they're doing.
Absolutely. Well, that brings me to the last question here. Are there any particular resources or web pages or things that you think would be helpful to point folks to learn more?
Yeah, I think definitely our diversity, equity, and inclusion toolkit. We put that together during the pandemic, so it was just very timely. And it had been in development before the pandemic, but that gave us the opportunity, the time, and the space to really focus on it. And so it's really geared towards firm culture, hiring practices, taking care of your people, all from a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens. And so that's one resource that I would love to point people towards. Just the website, our online community, great resources for people that are already participating in the community. If they're not members of NAPFA, we've got a network of study groups all around the country. And so we'd love to, have them take a test drive. They're starting to return to some in-person experiences. And so it's a good way for someone who's thinking about potentially joining the association to plug in. And then, you've seen one NAPFA event, I believe, maybe two. So we do have a conference coming up in early May in Atlanta. And I know we don't like to give dates and things like this, but I think it's just a good way to engage with this community. We've been consistently rated very high on our content, the networking opportunities, the community building opportunities. And so I think for anyone who isn't already a part of this community, it's just an easy place to plug in. So I'd love to point that towards that.
Great. Well, thank you for your time today and for sharing some insights. It's greatly appreciated. And thank you for all the work that you do and for the NAPFA community and everything that you do for the industry at large. So I appreciate you all leading the charge and everything.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. And, thanks for being such a good partner for NAPFA and, all of the firms that are part of our community. Everyone speaks very highly of you and your colleagues, and, we've gotten to witness it firsthand. And so I look forward to working with you guys in the future.
Oh, we appreciate it. Well, thank you again for your time this evening, and looking forward to staying in touch.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.